cold sweat running down Mateo Velásquez's neck was not just a reaction to the heat. In fact, the room was freezing. The thermostat on the wall read 58 degrees Fahrenheit, a temperature low enough to make fingers stiffen over a keyboard. But Mateo was sweating. It was a cold, oily sweat, that specific type of biological reaction the human body only produces when the reptilian brain detects a predator in the room. It was exactly 3:42 a.m. on a Thursday, September 14th, 2023. Keep that date in mind. It was the exact moment a common man's reality collided with a state secret. He should not have been listening to that. No one with a level 3 clearance should have access to that audio channel. But there he was, sitting in a cheap ergonomic chair that squeaked with every movement, paralyzed by what was coming through his headphones. Look closely at the image I am describing. A tired technician, surrounded by blinking server racks, his eyes wide and focused on a waveform on the monitor. That oscillating green line on the screen did not represent data. It did not represent internet traffic. That was the voice of a man everyone in Venezuela knows. A voice that usually screams from podiums, but there, in that recording, was whispering with genuine dread. And the worst part was not the dictator's voice. The worst part was what was answering him. Mateo looked at the reinforced door behind him every 10 seconds. It is the classic behavior of cornered prey. He knew that, in that basement, no one would hear his screams. The hum of the industrial fans would drown out any human sound. Can you imagine the physical weight of this situation? Being alone, buried 50 feet below street level, holding a digital bomb capable of bringing down a regime, or more likely, ensuring you disappear before sunrise. His hand shook so much he could barely hold the mouse to click save. It is an impossible choice, do you not think? Ignore what he heard and live like a coward, or record the proof and risk never seeing his family again. In that moment, Mateo did not know it, but he was already a dead man walking. The only question was how much time he had left. To understand the magnitude of the mistake, we need to understand who Mateo Velásquez is. He is not a CIA agent. He is not an undercover political activist. Far from it. Mateo is, or was, the definition of an invisible man. At 44 years old, he carried on his face the marks of someone who sleeps too little and worries too much. A senior infrastructure specialist, an IT technician contracted by CAN TV, a fancy title for a job that, in practice, consisted of crawling through dirty ducts and fixing the mess others left behind. He supported a wife and 2 children on a salary that, converted, did not reach $180 a month. Think about that. The man responsible for keeping the presidential palace's communications running earned less than a fast food worker in Ohio. It is revolting, but that is how the system operates. It exploits technical competence by paying crumbs. On that specific night, the work order was banal. Reconfigure the load balancing in rack 14 of secure switching room number 4. The location is a subterranean fortress. To get there, you pass through 3 armed checkpoints, 2 retina scanners, and a cargo elevator that slowly descends into the bowels of Caracas. The building above, the Miraflores Palace, is a monument to power and paranoia. But the basement? The basement is purely functional. Bare concrete walls, cables as thick as human arms running along the ceiling, and that constant smell of ozone and burnt dust that any IT technician recognizes. Mateo was tired. He had taken the extra shift because he needed to fix the alternator on his car, an old sedan that broke down every other day. His motivation was purely financial. He did not want to know state secrets. He wanted to finish the job, punch out, and go home to eat a cold arepa before sleeping for 3 hours. He is competent, methodical, the type of professional who organizes cables by color and labels everything, and it was exactly this cursed competence that sealed his fate. When he opened the rear panel of rack 14, he noticed something that broke the pattern. Amidst hundreds of sky blue fiber optic cables, there was a black coaxial cable, thick, shielded with copper mesh. It looked like Soviet military technology from the 80s. It was connected to an auxiliary port that, according to the official diagram Mateo had on his tablet, should have been empty and deactivated. A lazy technician would have ignored it. He would have closed the panel and left. But not Mateo. He saw that as an inventory error. Someone forgot to disconnect this old junk, he must have thought. Technical curiosity is a dangerous trap. Without knowing it, by attempting to clean the connection, he was about to plug his equipment directly into the devil's confessional. The human mind is fascinating in its capacity to deny danger. When Mateo connected his spectrum analyzer, a portable device the size of a brick, into the port of that black cable, he expected to see static, white noise, the sound of electronic void. That is what happens when you connect a dead wire. But the LCD display lit up with unexpected violence. The audiograph instantly jumped to the red. The virtual needle was hitting the ceiling of the decibel scale. It was not noise. It was a clean, strong, continuous signal. Mateo frowned. That made no technical sense. An analog cable without amplification, transmitting such a potent signal. He adjusted the device's sensitivity. The first thing he noticed was the origin of the signal. The impedance tracking indicated that the source was just 2 floors above, in a structurally isolated room, windowless, known on old maps as the chapel. The name alone causes a shiver down the spine, does it not? It is not a religious chapel. It is a nickname for rooms shielded against electronic espionage. Mateo tried to rationalize. It must be radio interference, he thought. Maybe the presidential guard frequency leaking into the cable. It is what any of us would think to maintain sanity. He turned the frequency knob, trying to clear the sound. And that was when his world stopped. The static disappeared and the voices became crystal clear. It was not radio. It was not an open broadcast. It was the ambient sound of a room. He could hear the dragging of a heavy wooden chair on a stone floor. He could hear the wheezing breath of someone close to the hidden microphone. And then the voice, that unmistakable voice, the leader of the nation, was speaking. But the tone, God, the tone was pathetic. He did not speak like the revolutionary who appears on TV. He spoke like a man who owes money to a dangerous loan shark. I did what was asked. The sacrifice was made at the border, the voice said. Mateo froze. He felt the blood drain from his face. That was not a conversation about foreign policy. The analyzer began to heat up in his hand. The smell of overheated plastic invaded the cold room. The equipment was struggling to process the data input. There was a second sound source there, something Mateo's human ear had not yet picked up, but which the device registered as a low-frequency anomaly. The atmosphere in the room changed drastically. The LED lights on the servers, which blinked rhythmically in green, seemed to dim in intensity. A sudden pressure in his ears, as if he were driving down a mountain rapidly. The air became dense, heavy. He should have yanked the cable out. He should have run, but he put the headphones on. Mateo did what the manual dictated. Poor, poor Mateo. He believed in the rules. With trembling hands, he opened the internal chat terminal to report the error to the night shift supervisor, a guy named Ramirez, who usually spent the shift sleeping or watching videos on his phone. KNTV Technician 44, detected unauthorized. Active interference in Rack 14. Physical line coming from Sector C. Protocol requires immediate shutdown, awaiting confirmation. He sent the message. The cursor blinked on the black terminal screen. 1 second, 10 seconds, a whole minute. Digital silence is agonizing. Usually Ramirez would reply with an "okay, proceed" or "leave it for the morning," but nothing happened. The chat system showed the message had been read. Someone on the other side saw it. Someone read it and stopped everything they were doing. The answer, when it came, was not via chat. It was via the building's automation system. Mateo heard a metallic clack coming from the room's entrance door, the heavy sound of magnetic locks being engaged remotely. He jumped up and ran to the door. He pushed the panic bar. Locked. The card reader on the outside changed from green to a solid, aggressive red. Then the chat beeped. A single line of text coming not from Ramirez, but from a nameless administrator user. Remain in position. Do not touch anything. Containment team en route. It was not a request, it was a sentence. The term containment team is not used for technical problems. It is used for biological leaks or maximum security breaches. Mateo felt his stomach drop. He realized with terrifying clarity that he was not the only one awake in that building watching that line. They knew he had plugged in. They were monitoring. The isolation hit hard. He was locked in a concrete box 50 feet deep. and that people who were supposed to protect him were coming to silence him. The feeling that everyone knows something terrible except you is the purest form of induced paranoia. And they left him there, cooking in his own fear, while the recording kept rolling. It was in this moment of desperation that Mateo's technical curiosity turned into a survival instinct. If they were coming to get him, he needed to know why. He needed an insurance policy. He went back to the chair, ignoring the chat orders, and increased the audio gain. He needed to hear the other voice. The spectrum analyzer showed something impossible. While the president's voice oscillated in normal human frequencies between 85 and 255 Hz, the thing answering him operated almost entirely in the infrasound zone, below 20 Hz. It is the type of sound you do not hear with your ears. You feel it with your guts. It is the frequency tigers use to paralyze prey before an attack. It is the frequency of earthquakes before the ground shakes. Mateo felt a violent nausea. The sound vibrated in his chest, sending his heart into arrhythmia, but the audio software tried to translate those vibrations into audible sound. What came out of the headphones was a guttural, wet, rhythmic sound. It sounded like large stones being ground against each other at the bottom of a flooded cave, but there was cadence, there was syntax. That was a language. "The people are thin. The harvest is good," said the guttural voice. It was not a metaphor. The president replied, stammering, "I need more time. The sanction. The money is gone." The entity's response was a sound that resembled a laugh, but a laugh made of snapping bones. "The money is yours. The hunger is mine. The deal was blood for the throne." Mateo looked at the monitor. The log file was getting gigantic, gigabytes of data being recorded every minute. He realized that this was not an old recording. The time code matched the Windows clock. That was happening live, too. Floors above his head, the most powerful man in the country was negotiating the misery of millions of people with something that did not seem to have been born on this planet. The proof was not political. They were not hiding corruption. They were hiding an abomination. This is where the story gets weird, you must be thinking. This is impossible. But look at human history. How many leaders obsessed with the occult have existed? Hitler, Stalin, ancient kings. Why would it be different now? Technology changes, but the pacts remain the same. The physical reality of the room began to deteriorate. I am not talking about ghosts. I am talking about physics. The presence of that infrasonic frequency in the electrical system began to cause hardware failures. Mateo's monitor started to show tearing, those visual glitches where the image rips apart. The air conditioning, previously humming softly, began to vibrate violently, as if the motor were off-axis. Mateo felt something warm run down his nose. He wiped his hand and saw bright red blood. The infrasound was rupturing his nasal capillaries. The cranial pressure was unbearable, a sudden migraine that was blinding. He tried to grab his phone to send a message to his wife. "Take care of the kids." That was all he wanted to write, but the phone screen was dead. The battery, which was at 80% minutes earlier, was drained. The electromagnetic field generated by the transmission in the coaxial cable was frying sensitive electronics. Nearby, he was completely isolated. Black cars were likely already parked outside his house at that moment, emails being deleted remotely. Mateo's digital life was being erased while he still breathed. His fear stopped being professional and became primitive. He looked at the security cameras in the upper corner of the room. The lenses, which previously focused on the door, turned on their own. All of them pointed directly at him. The red recording LED pulsed like an evil eye. They wanted to see his face while he listened. They were watching his terror as if it were entertainment. They tried to make you look crazy, incompetent. But there, in the dark, Mateo was the sanest person in the building. He knew what was coming. Steps in the corridor. They were not common steps. They were tactical boots, heavy, running in sync. The sound echoed on the metal of the outer floor. Mateo had seconds, maybe less. His mind cleared with the adrenaline. He could not leave, but the truth could. He yanked a personal USB drive from his keychain, a cheap 16-gigabyte drive he used to carry music and photos of his children. With hands slippery with blood and sweat, he plugged it into the machine. The corporate computer tried to block the USB port, but as a skilled IT technician, Mateo had local administrator privileges. He forced the copy. The transfer bar appeared on the screen. The audio file was heavy, 10%. The steps stopped at the door, the sound of a magnetic card being swiped in the reader. Denied. They had locked the door so well that even they could not open it immediately. 45%. Someone started banging on the reinforced door with something heavy, maybe a battering ram or the butt of a rifle. Open up! Sibin! Open now! 70%. Mateo stared at the green bar. He knew he was copying his death sentence, but he needed someone to know he was not crazy, that the people's hunger was not mismanagement. It was a tribute. 90%. The door gave way with a deafening metallic crash. Sparks flew from the hinges. 3 men in black with balaclavas and short rifles invaded the room. The leader did not yell, "Hands up!" He went straight to the computer. Mateo yanked the USB drive at the last second in a desperate move and slid it inside his safety boot under the thick sole. It was a magic trick performed by a terrified man. The Seabean agent pushed Mateo against the wall with such force that he felt a rib crack. The computer was ripped from the socket. The silence returned, broken, only by Mateo's panting breath and the sound of boots on the floor. He saw only the tip of the iceberg. The complete truth remains in the shadows, and that is what makes it all the more terrifying. What else did they discuss? What was promised? The conclusion of this story is not a Hollywood movie. There was no heroic rescue. Mateo Velásquez was taken from the building with a hood over his head. The official version, which appeared in the company daily 2 weeks later, stated that he had suffered a psychotic break due to stress and had been transferred to a psychiatric treatment unit in Táchira, nearly 500 miles away from the capital. His family never saw him again. His wife received a modest pension and a subtle warning not to ask questions if she wanted the children to stay in school. The system won. The institution continues to function. The lights of the Miraflores Palace remain on every night, consuming energy while the surrounding city lives in constant blackouts. And that room, secure switching room number 4, it is probably still occupied, but the USB drive, the drive. Months later, an encrypted file surfaced on a dark web forum posted by an anonymous user who claimed to have found a drive in the boot of an unclaimed body in a border morgue. The audio I described to you is based on the forensic analysis of that leaked file. The human voice was confirmed by 3 different biometric software programs as belonging to the leader. The other voice, well, no software could identify the species. The algorithm merely classified it as unknown biological origin predatory. Now I ask you, watching me from the comfort and safety of your home, what would you do? If you heard absolute evil whispering in the dark, would you have Mateo's stupid courage, or would you close your eyes and pray it did not see you? Write here in the comments, where are you watching this dossier from? I want to know how far the truth is reaching. Comment your city and country. Hello, and please, if you hear a strange whisper on your phone line tonight, do not try to listen more closely. Just hang up.